There is a brand new horror comedy film that just hit theaters this past weekend, and I finally got the opportunity to check this movie out, and let me tell you, this was a big surprise. Let's get to the review. Welcome back, film fans. It is Brad from Let's Be Real Brad, and today in the channel, I want to talk to you guys about the brand new horror comedy film called The Blackening. Before going into this film, I was very nervous to check this one out because the trailers for this movie looked like your typical parody, like a scary movie or a haunted house type of movie, and I just didn't really want to see it because the trailers were very focused on the jokes, which are very funny and creative, but I don't know if I could do a whole movie of that, considering like we have movies like the Scary Movie franchise and Haunted House, which I'm not really big fans of. But then when I sat in my seat and I finally got to check this movie out, I realized that it is a horror comedy, and this movie blends both the horror and comedy elements very well, and it felt like a real movie that had a lot of satire, but also still has a story and a slasher villain and some really intense, violent moments in this movie, which I found it to be really good. This is definitely one of those films that's going to get a big following in the years to come, where it's not going to open super big, a lot of people don't know about it, and then they'll make a sequel years from now and people will be talking all about this film. And I think it's because of the writing. Most of the writing in this movie is all improv, and to be honest with you, I honestly couldn't notice it until I read the Wikipedia page and said that there was improv, because the dynamics between this whole cast is so good and they're so entertaining. You really feel like that all of these cast members are friends in real life and that they are playing these characters so perfectly. This isn't one of the best acted films I've ever seen, but in terms of the camaraderie between this cast is so damn good. One of the best aspects about this film is the humor. This movie is filled to the brim with not so subtle social commentary jokes that I found to be really funny and very creative, especially in a post Get Out release because of how influential that movie was. And I also really enjoyed the delivery from all the cast members. They are so good in this film, especially because most of the actors in this movie aren't big names yet. One of my favorite performances was Jermaine Fowler, who plays the character of Clifton, who reminded me very heavily of the character Milton from Office Space. If you've seen that movie, I think that there had to been a reference to it, because there are too many coincidences from that movie and this movie, and I thought his performance was excellent. He was so hilarious, and this is a very hard character to do because he's a very weird and strange guy who has a little bit of a lisp, I believe. So, you know, this isn't the easiest character to play, and I thought he was terrific. Dwayne Perkins, who is also a co-writer on this movie, plays the character of Dwayne, and I thought he was great in this movie. He was so funny. He delivered some of the best moments of the whole film, and you do feel his stardom is starting with this movie because he is just so good. He is so confident in this character, and with him being a co-writer on the movie, you definitely feel a lot of the comedy probably came from him because he's definitely like the funniest character in the whole film. One of the most impressive aspects about this film is the fact that it has a $5 million budget, and it looks really good for how much this movie costs. I mean, the whole movie is set primarily in one location, one house, and you don't feel the limitations of the budget. They really go for it, especially with the violent and more horrific moments that are very bloody, and you do feel that it's real. And I have to give it a lot of credit for such a small independent movie like this to be able to be so convincing. I also really enjoyed the story here, as it is something we have seen 100 different times before, and it's been parodied many different times with this cabin in the woods type of story that's very reminiscent of an Evil Dead type of movie, but it does something very different here. here, where it explores more of the social commentary with this game they play called The Blackening, and the characters have to use their knowledge and of Black history and just things in general to get themselves through the game. And I also really enjoyed the fact that these characters all come together for Juneteenth, which this movie was released in this past weekend, because that actually made this movie work really well and made all these different subplots and connections all come together, and it made the movie just much more enjoyable in that way. Easily, one of my favorite aspects about this film has got to be the rewatch value that this movie has. The jokes feel timeless, the delivery is excellent, and it's just a well-paced movie. I was never bored at any moment in this movie, and I actually like all the characters in this movie. Sure, they're not the most complex characters I've ever seen in a horror film, but for what this is, I actually knew who the characters are, and I actually really enjoyed them, and I didn't want to see them die. That's how much I enjoyed these characters in this movie. Even the beginning of the movie, where we're setting up all these different characters and their storylines and how they know each other, and them just hanging out and enjoying themselves, I actually thought was really entertaining. And most of the time in these type of movies, this would be one of the worst aspects of the movie, but it really wasn't, and I think having such a good cast really made this movie work. Now, talking about the horror, I thought it was pretty decent. I do think that the horror could have been better and, shot better, because there are a few kills in here that they definitely had to work around the budget and not to show certain things, which I gotta give them credit for trying, but you definitely feel it very early on where there are not a lot of kills in this movie. It does feel a little disappointing. Even though this movie does have a lot of tension and thrills and a few jump scares, the horror could have been a lot better in this movie, but because this movie is focused as more of a horror comedy and the satire, I do forgive it just a little bit. Unfortunately, I do have a few negatives with this film, and I do have to start with a subplot that begins in the beginning of the movie and carries through the rest of the film that just feels so unnecessary. It feels like it's there just to create conflict between these three characters, and it just doesn't need to be in the movie. Like, if you took it out, nothing would really change. And the other big negative I have with this film is with the twist, which I thought was one of the most obvious twists I ever seen. This twist could have been done so much better in terms of if the characters somehow knew what the twist was already and were just like, yeah, we already know about this thing. But they don't, and they act surprised, and the movie is trying to convince us. It was really obvious to anyone who's ever seen a mystery horror type movie in their lives, and I just thought it was kind of disappointing. The twist in itself makes sense in terms of the story, but the execution of it and trying to keep us guessing was very obvious, and I just didn't really enjoy it all that much. Overall, guys, The Blackening was a very enjoyable horror comedy film that was a big surprise to me. It features a really great cast who has a ton of talent here, and the writing is really good, the horror is pretty decent, and for it to be an hour and 37 minutes, this is a great film to check out in the theaters for what it is, and I think you guys won't be disappointed. I'm giving The Blackening a 7 out of 10. Thank you guys so much for checking out this review. As I want to know below in the comment section, have you heard of The Blackening? And if you've seen the movie, let me know all of your thoughts down below. I can't wait to hear about those. Before you guys check out this video, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, leave a like as you always should, and ring that notification bell so I can see you all in the following video.